Hello everybody and welcome to this webinar from Kelso Consulting on how to get your cybersecurity firm in the national media. First of all, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Tim Prizeman. I'm a director with Kelso Consulting, where we style ourselves as reputation builders. We're a public relations agency and we've been around for 20 years advising business to business technology, financial consultancy and professional firms for over 20 years. The reason we're putting on this webinar is that we have particular experience getting such businesses in the national media. This could be the national newspapers, broadcasters, newswires, trade journals, wherever. And we have won 4 national PR and marketing awards for such campaigns. Indeed, 3 of them were for B2B tech businesses. An important element of what we help our clients with, and it's very important indeed for cybersecurity firms, tech firms, and anyone who is looking to get through the door with senior decision makers, whether that they are executives in large businesses or owners in SMEs, is the whole area of thought leadership, which we will touch on briefly within this because it is again very important for generating sustained press coverage. To just say a little bit about Kelso Consulting, as I mentioned, we're all about building powerful reputations. So we're a boutique public relations agency. Certainly we're all about helping our clients deliver high impact media coverage, but not just that. All of the people you're looking to reach are on LinkedIn, and this is a particularly powerful channel for using in conjunction with your press activity to make sure you're getting the maximum impact on your key targets, but also things like awards, case studies, speaking at events, having credible articles and blogs on your website, and indeed demonstrating strong thought leaderships are all highly important for generating powerful reputation. Indeed, strong thought leadership is more and more, and indeed very frequently, a requirement in its own right for tenders for larger businesses, and we've seen it from businesses right across the piece, from banks to even large building consortiums. So what are we going to cover? Well, first of all, I'm going to briefly cover a few mindset traps which not just technology businesses, but certainly often cybersecurity firms have, which sends their PR campaign off in the wrong direction and often down a very unsuccessful cul-de-sac. We'll be talking about 5 approaches that are proven to work for cybersecurity firms. Indeed, we'll be illustrating them with a couple of case studies. Often cybersecurity firms are either in startup or early stage scale-up mode, and we just want to highlight a few traps that are particularly relevant to them, but also we do see larger and more established businesses fall into those, so don't switch off if you're not a startup. And we'll be covering questions at the end, but what I would say is do fire your questions through as we go along, and I will try to cover them if they're particularly relevant to an area we're discussing. So don't hold back till the end, do send them through in the meantime. So we're going to, by way of housekeeping, just to let you know, you will be getting a recording of this webinar afterwards. It'll come through tomorrow. Not tomorrow, on Monday, but and that will come through both as this video, but also as a podcast if you want to listen to it while you're driving around. We'll also be sending through a questionnaire immediately after this. So, in theory, getting in the media is relatively straightforward. People have been doing it for a long time. The underlying techniques have not changed. It starts by thinking about who are your key audiences, which hopefully are contained in your marketing or communication strategy. You want to think what sources are credible to them, what are the publications, the websites they're reading, what are their other sources of influence. Then it's all about the creative aspect of having something interesting and newsworthy to say. You need to deal with the media in the right sort of way so that they're quoting you rather than their competitors, or indeed not covering the issue at all, but talking about something else. So, but again, quite frankly, the techniques for that haven't changed in the 27 years I've been involved in media relations. Maybe faxes have replaced emails, maybe journalists are harder to get hold of because of voicemail, maybe there are fewer journalists about because the internet's undermined the economics of many publications, so most of them have been sacked, but the fundamentals haven't changed. And the key thing is, don't give up after your first attempt. If businesses give up after their first attempt at everything, there wouldn't be very much they would do. The same with media relations. The reality is, particularly in cybersecurity, you are launching yourself into a crowded market now for commentators. Maybe it wasn't a few years ago, it is now. So the key thing is not to give up after your first attempt, but continue, perhaps learn from any errors, but at the same time you need to accept that sometimes it is consistency and repetition that bring results, not just popping up out of nowhere. Okay, so mindset traps to avoid. The first one, and a lot of business, particularly tech businesses, but a lot of businesses fall into this trap. Indeed, I fell into this trap myself when I launched my business in the previous millennium. That is the belief that new is good. Certainly in the consumer market, in the fashion market, new is indeed good, but not so in the conservative and risk-averse world of B2B marketing, B2B purchasing, and indeed journalism as well. When you say new, others, particularly journalists, hear unproven. New means nobody is using it. For other people, it might mean it is very buggy. It might mean that you're not going to be around very much longer. There's certainly with journalists, they've been approached by all sorts of people who are launching and are here today, gone tomorrow. It also means risky. Risky for end users, risky for journalists to write about it. So promoting the new has to be done with a lot of care, and not the automatic thought that it is a selling point. The second mindset trap is that because it's a big deal for you, it must be a big deal for other people. Absolutely not so. Journalists are not there to help your business out. With the right approach in, they may well be able to do it. There is an old poem, you cannot hope to bend nor twist, thank God the British journalist, but seeing what the man will do unbribed, there's no occasion to. But just because it is a big deal for you, doesn't mean it's a big deal for them. Often we see this exhibited through people insisting on a launch day on a particular time because it is convenient to them, oblivious on what is going on in the rest of the world. If you have a launch day of the 31st of October this year, I would strongly suggest that you might want to think of another occasion if you're going to be attracting the media's attention, for instance. Coupled with new, and it's important to us, is the idea that we're the next big thing. We must tell journalists we have this wonderful technology, we're going to be the next big thing. Maybe you are, and it is fabulous to be ambitious, but the reality is every day that journalist gets rung up by someone saying they are going to be the next big thing. And I'll be honest, it doesn't wash with them. In fact, it is all it does is make them think that it's just another one of these here today, gone tomorrow, overhyped businesses. So you may well be the next big thing, but it's not going to wash with journalists. It's not going to get you any coverage at all. What they want is proven substance. The next big problem, especially for technology businesses, is the belief that journalists are interested in your technology, they are interested in your features. There are a very, very small number of ultra geeky journalists who are interested in your technology. Yes, do discuss it with those, but 90%, if not 99% of journalists, especially the ones who write for publications you might want to get into that target your target sectors, they are not at all interested in your technology, and indeed when you speak to them, their big complaint is they are bombarded by representatives of technology firms trying to get meetings with them by hook or by crook. For instance, if you are targeting the insurance sector or the banking sector, the reality is the journalists are not that interested in your technology. They have a passing interest in some of it. But as one journalist put to me, technology is vital. Furniture is vital. We do not write about technology. We do not write about furniture. Of course, there are ways and means to get furniture into these publications, and there are indeed ways and means for getting your technology in there, and that is what we're all about, and we're going to help you do the same as well. But it is not through talking about what's going on in the engine room, what's going on underneath, and expecting journalists to write an article about it. And the biggie, the big hate amongst journalists, and indeed probably your, in fact definitely your end users as well, is the belief that using tech jargon shows we are experts. Again, it is not only technology firms that fall into this trap. Management consultants can jargon for the Olympics if there were a gold medal in it, thinking that somehow that sells with their audiences. The same in accountancy sector, the same wherever. People fall into the trap that they feel that they must use jargon. Now, there is difference between using jargon and using appropriate terminology. If you are selling pharmaceuticals to doctors, then clearly you have to know the correct Latin terminology and the correct name for the particular condition. The same in your sector as well, but there is a difference between using appropriate terminology when dealing with an end user, and that is appropriate terminology for their sector, with using lots of tech jargon. So, what works for building press coverage for your business, for cybersecurity businesses? And indeed, these techniques work well for many other types of B2B business as well. wasn't expecting those slides there. Here we go. That was a nice surprise. This is the correct one. The first thing that works really well and is the easiest thing for you to do, and is the most underutilized technique for scoring high impact coverage, is the good old-fashioned letter to the editor. Also, expert comment articles and expert advice articles are very good, but let's deal with letters to the editor. And everyone, I'm sure, will be familiar with the letters page of such publications as The Times, the Financial Times, The Guardian, but also all manner of trade publications have these. And I'm not talking about the random ranting that goes on in the blogs and the comment sections underneath articles. I'm talking about the curated letters page. And it is very straightforward to get in these, and I will tell you the magic formula. First of all, you spot an article which is very relevant to the to cybersecurity, or whatever it is you want to comment on, but let's say cybersecurity. There will be an email to send your letters to. It will be something like letters@ft.com or something similar. What you need to do is respond quickly, so you are in the next edition of that publication, or if it is a daily publication, you certainly need to get it there so that they can publish it within 2 days. The formula is the first paragraph quickly references the article along the lines of, there was an interesting article on X in Monday's edition, however, and at that point you put in what it is you want to take issue with. This could be that they did not bring out the particular problem fully enough. Maybe they didn't address the real challenge, or maybe there was something that was either wrong, or maybe you have a humorous anecdote, as publications love those. Then, in no more than 2 succinct paragraphs, you explain the idea, and then you do a final wrap-up paragraph. So 4 paragraphs. Sometimes they will publish letters that are longer, but they work on the basis that if a letter is 4 paragraphs, then they can get more of those in, so they will you have more chance of getting in. You send it from yourself because they like to come back and confirm your the person purporting to send the letter as who it is, so don't get your PR agency such as us or whoever to send it, although certainly we draft them for our clients and get them to send them, and have your phone number on it, as sometimes they want to ring if they're going to make amendments to it. And indeed have a proof point of your expertise in here, such as your what your business does and any particular experience in there. But again, make it very succinct. That is all there is to it. I would suggest crack on with those at the earliest opportunity. If you follow our formula, certainly we get an 80% hit rate for our clients with those, so don't necessarily expect your first one to go in. Expect it will take a couple of attempts to get your swing in. Do look at the article, the letters they do publish, to see what worked for other people. But it's one of those things I would strongly suggest write it as a to-do point for next week. Give it a go. The same sort of thing applies to expert comment articles. Something happens in the media. These are great opportunities for writing a bit of advice, either how to avoid it or why the government or regulator needs to do more about it. And certainly with those sorts of things, most publications have them. National newspapers less so, although certainly there are the occasional opportunities, but these are fabulous opportunities for getting into the trade media your clients read. So if you're targeting manufacturing businesses, articles in those. If you are targeting insurance businesses, articles in those. Now you may say that your business and your solution applies to a whole range of businesses. Well, that sounds great, but that's not how the media is structured. The media is structured primarily on a sector basis, so you need to take your message and sectorize it. As soon as you start doing that, first of all, you have more impact with the readers, but secondly, you have more chance of getting coverage as you open up a whole range of publications which are credible with your target audiences. Moving on from this, being the expert commentator. Now, if you limit yourself to, I want to talk about my product and my business, there are very, very limited opportunities, as journalists on the whole don't want to write about your company or your product. So you need to be the expert commentator on what is going on. And as with the previous way of getting in the media, as soon as you become the expert commentator, you open up a vast range of coverage opportunities. So as an example, where this works well is issues, and cybersecurity lends itself very much to this, where they are going to be periodically in the media. This might be periodically because you can predict the events. So this might be where there's particular regulation or a particular industry consultation or whatever going on. Or it might be that you can't necessarily predict the timing, but you know that they will happen. So we know there's going to be another big data breach at a large company or public sector organisation. We don't necessarily know when it's going to happen, but we know these things come around reasonably regularly, so it's a question of being prepared for when that happens and being able to move quickly. Clearly, you need to have distinctive insights, viewpoints, proof points, data, whatever it is, to use at the time. You need to often develop these in advance, albeit fine-tune them in the light of events. If you expect to get in the media by saying the same as everybody else, then the very best you will achieve is a small share of it, and the reality is you're unlikely to get anything, because ultimately, why should they get a bland view from you when they can go to a big well-known brand and get a bland view from them? What you have as a smaller cybersecurity business is the ability to move quickly and give distinctive insights without, clearly at the big company, it goes through several layers of corporate approval and is sanitized by the end of it. Your strength is that you don't have that sort of bureaucracy with your business. And if you're a small business and have generated that sort of bureaucracy, and I certainly come across that, then you need to rethink things. Make sure also you are communicating your base of credibility. This is what research you've done, what clearly clients may not be something you can name, brilliant if you can, but certainly need to talk about the sorts of clients you have in very specific ways, your experience, these sorts of things. It's actually quite often for cybersecurity businesses to hide actually some really great credentials under a bushel. So make sure that you're communicating the credibility you do have. An example of this is a campaign we did in autumn 2017, which was the launch of Cyber Decider, which is the only cyber insurance comparison engine. And as you've seen from there, we got a lot of coverage in their target media, which for them was the insurance and financial technology one. But we also got them into such publications as the Telegraph, the Times and the Mail as well. How did we do this? Well, as I've mentioned, if I'd put out a press release saying new cyber insurance comparison engine launched, we'd have got Zippo coverage as journalists aren't reporting this. So what we did in their case is use that and the information that is held within there to be able to get in them to comment on the challenges being faced by readers of these publications. So in the case of insurance publications, we started talking all about the challenges of selling cyber insurance for insurance brokers. With the national media, we did a campaign around how cyber criminals were targeting schools in the run-up to term ending and term starting, which of course is something a lot of the readers of these publications have readers who are particularly going to be targeted, particularly in the case it was private schools were the particular target because of school fees being paid. So again, very important to readers of welfare publication or publications that target welfare readers like the Times and the Mail. So with these sorts of elements, we were able to build a lot of coverage for around the launch, a lot of credibility for them. Ultimately, they were a small startup being launched by a consultancy. And as you will see, a lot of credible media helps build their reputation with the people they're selling to, and indeed helps build their domain authority for Google so that they come on top of searches as well. But the general lesson there, which echoes what we've been saying earlier, is you need to become the expert commentator and use that as the platform for talking about your product or your service or your brand or whatever you want to, whatever your messages are. Picking up on this, you will have heard the term thought leadership. I'm not going to talk about it too much as we have a separate webinar on generating high impact thought leadership, and indeed we have one on generating thought leadership on a budget, and indeed I've written a book on the subject available from Amazon. So we're not going to go into it in too much detail here, but what I want to do is highlight the importance of thought leadership. This is having interesting insights backed with credible proof points, and the sorts of credible proof points are typically some sort of data. You will certainly be well aware of big consultancies doing surveys. Surveys are a very good way of doing it. We do these with our clients. We'll come on to an example of this, but it can also be the analysis of publicly available data. In fact, this is a very powerful way of doing it, as the data is free, and that's a very good way of doing it. It could be an analysis of your own data, and if you are providing a software as a service, then within your system there is huge amounts of data that can be mined and turned into insights, proof points, thought leadership. Indeed, in a slightly different area, we did this with one of our clients, one of the campaigns. In fact, we won 2 awards for that campaign. But also, it could be through demonstrating leadership as well. This could be, in fact, launching a campaign for a change, maybe a legal change, maybe a regulatory one, maybe to something around an industry standard, maybe simply a change in behaviour that needs to be undertaken. But certainly launching a campaign and taking a leadership role is a very powerful way of creating a thought leadership position, as well as through using research. And research needn't be expensive. It can be expensive, particularly if done the wrong way, but at the same time we've won 3 awards for thought leadership campaigns based on opinion surveys, and all of those were in limited budget categories, so you can definitely generate a big impact on a limited budget if you go about it the right way. An example of such campaign was for the cybersecurity arm of T-Systems, who clearly they're part of a bigger corporate, although ultimately in the UK they're up against much bigger brands. They are themselves a challenger brand within their area. We undertook a omnibus survey for them, wrote it up as a cybersecurity report, and that opened up a wide range of coverage, including several mentions in the Times and the Daily Telegraph, as well as business publications, HR publications as well, which was a relevant audience for part of the campaign, as well as a whole range of technology publications as well. So again, the point behind all of this is that even big companies need to can't be there talking about their systems, their technology, their whatever. It's all about positioning themselves as expert commentators on particular issues and creating the news by having interesting insights backed up by proof points. I appreciate fully in the world of cybersecurity, people are not queuing up to talk about the data incursions they have had. Nonetheless, with buyers and indeed with media, case studies are the most powerful way of proving your credibility. Now, in the case of named businesses, if you can't have those, then they need to be anonymised. But breach examples that talk about the interesting aspects of it and aren't sanitised, everything went wonderful examples have a big impact. They have a big impact with potential purchasers. They have a big impact with journalists. If you are able to do appointment announcements, wins, those sorts of things, and I realise that people may not be queuing up for those, but I will highlight that those will indeed have a huge PR impact with particular publications if you are able to do them. And as mentioned in passing before, but particularly to reinforce, the more you can go after particular segments and sectors and build up reputations in them through consistency rather than hit and run campaigns, the more coverage you will get, the more credibility with those sectors. Ultimately, successful marketing is all about, it's not about successful Marcoms campaigns, as important as those are. Successful marketing is all about good segmentation, going after the key markets with the key messages in the right way at the right time with the right offering. in terms of startup traps, I just want to highlight a few of those very briefly. Often you find businesses they talk big, but they look small. Their website looks amateurish. Their LinkedIn has company page with 3 employees. They're using some sort of post office box or residential address or maybe a mobile phone number. They've all done selfies with their smartphone for their leadership team. You're never going to be treated as credible particularly by the media, if you look amateurish. So before you start any campaign, go through these things. You don't need to have a huge expensive website rebuild to sort these things out, but you certainly need to go through and sort them out. Yes, in the world of technology, there are a lot of smoke and mirrors. Have you got funding? What level of funding? Are people actually customers or doing a trial version? All of these sorts of things. Don't believe your smoke and mirrors is going to fool journalists, nor is it going to fool experienced end users. Often we find businesses launch too early rather than they think that getting press coverage will solve all their business development problems. Our advice is often hold back the launch till you will be making credible impact rather than go in early, blowing it and not getting a second chance. There's clearly lots of things that can be done in the meantime to build up your credibility. Blogs, LinkedIn posts, credible comment, indeed campaigns aimed around being an expert commentator. So build up your credibility ahead of launch rather than expect your launch will deliver missing credibility. So look the part, have endorsers, talk about the problems you solve, not your features, and have a really strong answer, whether it comes from clients, but particularly from journalists as we're talking about getting press coverage, to the question, which is you tell them all about yourself, why you're important, what you're here to do, and they effectively say, why should I give a fig? What is your response to that? You need a very, very strong response, and if you can do that, then you are in a good position, and certainly we help people with this. So we're going to be coming on to questions in a minute. I've got a couple of slides I might need to backtrack to, as they seem to have been somewhere I wasn't expecting them. So if you could send through your questions now. Can I flag up? We have further Kelso Consulting webinars. We have some on thought leadership on a budget, which builds on some of the things we were talking about earlier. We have one on getting your business to the top of Google, and a particularly important part of that is blogging on the sorts of issues that are going to be of interest to your clients, and we talk about that. And we have one around getting your comms strategy right. If you get your comms strategy right, then all the other things that follow are far more effectively. If you're going down in the wrong direction, and we often see this, then subsequently your communications, your marketing, your all the aspects of your campaign are dramatically less effective. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about understanding journalists, because ultimately the way to think about journalists when you are approaching them on using the ways we were talking about earlier is that you are in a very much a sales relationship. If you imagine the journalist is the buyer, they pay you by giving you press coverage. They are fully aware how valuable to your business a mention in their publication is. But they have lots of suppliers. They have lots of people ringing them up, trying to persuade them to write about their business or quote their business. So they are spoilt for choice. Who do they go to? Well, there is a misnomer that they will go to their best buddy in a PR agency. Now, I'm not saying relationships are not important, but they only go to their best buddy if their best buddy is able to supply them something interesting. Indeed, this person is someone the journalist rings up because they give them good stuff. If their best buddy says, I've got a really weak story, I'd like you to run it, rather than some interesting stuff, the reality is that the journalist starts to stop calling that person. So what you need to do to be successful in the media, and the more credible the media you are looking to get in, the more you need to do this, is rather than spending your time with a weak idea trying to flog it to as many journalists as possible, you get a strong idea at the right time and present it in the right way to the right journalist, at which point they will say words to the effect, blooming hell, this is a good story, I want to use it. So, as a cybersecurity company, you need to be thinking, what is it that we can provide to journalists that is going to have that effect, rather than thinking, oh, well, we want to say the same stuff as everyone else, how can we persuade them to cover us? When all we're doing is providing the same stuff as other existing suppliers. In the same way as with a sales call, if you're going to sell, it is through the right person at the right time with the right offering. It's the same with journalists, the right person at the right time with the best offering. And that is all about it being interesting, relevant, and indeed preferably entertaining if possible. Otherwise, in the case of cybersecurity, it can certainly be gripping and maybe even alarming. And the way to think about this is understanding particularly that if you start with national newspapers, there is a big misconception people have that national newspapers write for senior managers, for executives. No national newspaper, not even the Financial Times, writes for senior executives. They typically see their readers as voters, employees, and investors. So with voters, that is why there is a lot of stuff around public policy issues, and indeed around leadership elections and, dare I say it, Brexit, because they see their readers as voters. They see their readers as employees. So this is why there is, when business is covered, it is often around workplace issues. There is a lot, as we know at the moment, around mental health in the workplace, employee well-being, Me Too, all of these sorts of issues. So they see their readers as employees. And they see their readers as investors. This might be city investors, but more likely they see their readers as people who invest, whether through their ISA or indirectly through their pension. So that is why there is a lot of stuff around company results, personal finance pages, those sorts of things. They do not see their readers as executives. This trickles down and is very much the case in trade publications as well. You may be targeting the CIO. Now, CIO magazine targets CIOs, but CIOs will read other publications as well. But the readers of, say, Insurance Times and Insurance Post do not see CIOs in insurance companies as specifically their readership. They see their readers as the broad body of employees in the insurance industry across brokers, insurance companies, reinsurers, etc. So to get into these publications, you may well want to be read by CIOs, but you need to address things in a way that deals with employees. In the same way, the way to get into national newspapers is to think about important public policy and workplace, or indeed financial aspects as well. So when you are thinking about being the expert, it is people who talk not, certainly if you can demystify technology, demystify cybersecurity, that is very powerful, but no one is going to give you 5 minutes to do that. What they want is people who can demystify it in a very simple sentence and then move on to explain about the impact for people at home, people in the workplace, and the public policy angles of what should be done that isn't being done. Now, we will move back to questions. Question: what about LinkedIn, social media and Twitter? Well, let's talk about those. Now, first of all, LinkedIn is hugely powerful. All the people you are looking to target are largely on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has really taken off in the past couple of years, both because more people are using it, but secondly because more options for targeting people have become available, including paid for ones. So while I'm not going to be able to go through and provide a how to do it tutorial on these areas, what I would suggest is if LinkedIn is not a major part of your strategy, then you are missing a very big trick. For instance, the things that work well on LinkedIn, particularly at the moment, are face-to-camera videos or maybe vlogs where people are doing a quick talk to camera, not expensively produced corporate videos, and not necessarily amateurish face to cameras, although some people who are very popular on LinkedIn, they record themselves ranting away while they're driving their car. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as your first one, but it's working for some people. But certainly straightforward face to camera, talking 45 seconds knowledgeably on a cybersecurity topic. Give it a try. I think you'll be surprised at how big a take-up it gets. But don't leave it at there. Sponsoring posts. LinkedIn allows you, because LinkedIn has all the data on it, so if you want to target CIOs in big companies in London, well, LinkedIn allows you to target these people with very specific campaigns, both by getting more posts into their feed, so those are called boosts, or in mails into their box, so that they click on that and whatever the call to action is. Now, clearly, it's not a question about spamming these people. You've got to have content and calls to action that are highly relevant to them. And that's the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful campaign. But with very low cost per click, and you know the person clicking it is highly relevant, LinkedIn is highly cost effective at the moment. What I would also recommend you do, and there are ways to this as well, is if you're stalking particular companies that will be you see as good opportunities, is you start getting these people into your network. And again, there are ways to build up your network through getting these people into your network, getting them as first contacts, and then building out through there and using that to get a bit of warmth to help with subsequent sales approaches. So there's all manner of things you should be using in LinkedIn, and if you're not doing it, you're missing a very big trick. And of course, if you're getting press coverage, then using LinkedIn to amplify it is very powerful, because it reminds all the people in your contact base of the great credible press coverage you're getting it, and not just using it once but doing it several times in a systematic way. What about LinkedIn? Well, I'm a big believer that the best channel at the moment is LinkedIn, but certainly using Twitter to again publicize your press coverage, link up with commentators, include media outlets so that maybe they will retweet it, have important keywords to draw traffic to your Twitter and ultimately get them clicking a call to action. These sorts of things are very powerful. But if you're not strongly using social media at the moment, I think the first place you should be going for by a long way is LinkedIn. Okay, other questions. We have one. Why is it that Darktrace gets all the attention? Well, Darktrace gets all the attention because they've done a very good job of it. They were early movers in it. The GCHQ link gives it lots of sex appeal. They've got a good backstory to it, so that certainly gets helps them, and there are lessons there for people to learn. Journalists love a good backstory and these sorts of things, but they're not the only one who has a good backstory and lots of sex appeal to them. And there's plenty of other opportunities for cybersecurity companies. Indeed, the other case studies we highlighted earlier shows there's plenty of opportunity for businesses that go about it the right way in a systematic way. So what next? Well, you need to think about your communication strategy. Who it is you're targeting, who are the key messages, and what are their biggest challenges, and indeed what are some of the biggest opportunities but also the biggest dangers facing them. You need to be building up blogs, articles, if possible case studies, maybe anonymised, and have a timetable and plan for getting these done. When is the best time to have planted a tree? 20 years ago. When is the second best time to plant a tree? Today. The same with your blogs. It would have been better to have done them in the past, but the best time, if you didn't do them in the past, is to do them now. Why not get an intern to review what your competitors are doing and get you to do a report? There's plenty of them going to be around and available over the summer. Still time to hook one up, get an intern to do it. Get together a plan and a timetable for exploiting your next initiative. Don't just launch it and then think, oh, what could we have done on the PR? Oh, and then beat yourself up over it. Create that now. And do look at a couple of our webinars once you have started to do these ones on maximising your impact from thought leadership, as really that is how you're going to get into the C-suite, get into bigger businesses, and indeed get into the media. It's by engaging them at a thought leadership level rather than a features level. How can we help? Well, clearly we run these webinars because we want people to be successful, but we hope that you will bear us in mind and maybe even use us to help you be successful in this areas. We can certainly help you right at the outset by facilitating maybe your brainstorms, creative messaging sessions, all of these sorts of things, and help you look at ways that your business can stand out against your competitors and get a foot in the door with the media and indeed elsewhere. We help by helping businesses create strong communication strategies. If you wanted us to do a you versus some competitors benchmarking, we certainly do that sort of thing. And clearly with excellent implementation, both for media relations, but indeed for social media, and indeed with clients as well. We help them win awards, we help them win we help them with getting speaking slots, we help them with writing high impact white papers and reports as well. So indeed, typically our campaigns, once they get going, have these sorts of issues, and we help our clients move and transition from talking only or largely about their features, as important as your features are, to talking about the issues that are important to your clients and your prospects, and indeed the sorts of issues that will allow you to be a sustainable and long-going campaign as an expert commentator, because ultimately if you're seen as the expert on an issue, you will always get coverage on that issue. If your campaigns are largely based around your product, it's typically a one-off burst and it's here today, gone tomorrow. Okay, last call on any questions. No, thank you all very much for joining us on this webinar. I do hope to see you on future ones. I hope it has been very useful for you. Please do give us feedback on the form that will be coming through shortly, and I wish you an enjoyable rest of the day.